What is up, YouTube? So I just watched this video that was just released today on the Ellen DeGeneres channel on YouTube, and it just blew my mind. I'm gonna link it in the description, and it is so ridiculous. I don't even want to give the whole thing away, but I kind of have to. It's really short. It's a 3-minute video of this Prodigy female. She's 8 years old, and she starts off playing this ridiculous song on the piano, and then you find out that she is a world championship chess player playing on a high level with adults at 8 years old, and in addition to that, writing a book on the United Emirates, which is where she played chess at with these people. And it just blows your mind at the ridiculous stuff this girl is doing. And first off, from someone who studied piano privately and competed on the county and state level, and practiced like an hour a day for about over 10 years, just based off her performance, I know this girl is good. She's accomplished something that many people who study piano privately can't accomplish after 10, 15 years of private practice. And just from my perspective and knowledge and experience with piano, the reason has to do with a lot of factors like severe interest. For her, obviously, there's a huge talent that plays a factor too. But in addition to that, interest sort of just stems off everything. If you're severely interested in something, you can practice 8 hours per day. It won't feel like practice. And I'm sure she's done something like that. But the dexterity of her fingers, it just, she had to have been taught. If she wasn't, it's just natural talent. For her to be able to do that, she just illustrates the power of natural genetic talent in our society. And with my science background, I completely understand where she is in terms of species and in terms of evolutionary advantage. She was born with genetic advantages that have created dramatic traits and talent that are advantageous in our current environment, in our current scenario. It's what always happens. It's what allowed certain people in our history, our ancestors, to survive rather than others. And no doubt she will be very successful. She will make a lot of money. But here, now we get to a point of whether it's a very interesting question that actually a lot of these prodigies have come and gone on talent shows on TV. Now that I think about it, and YouTube, and same thing with vocal singing competitions. And from my experiences watching all these shows and just thinking about life, I realized that sure, if you have tremendous talent that just gives you such a tremendous advantage and head start, a huge head start and a concurrent advantage throughout your life, you do great. But there's so many other factors that play here. There's arguably similar people in similar spheres in terms of musical skill or chess skill. This girl being very unique in that she has both. But what I've realized is that I'm going to be very honest. Heck, not all of them are. They never become those great people like Mozart or Einstein. Nor do many of them end up becoming the richest people in the world or even close to it. Oftentimes they do pretty well. They do arguably almost always better than the average person who makes an average income or the homeless person on the street. But when you look at those intangibles that separate the Michael Jacksons or the successful musicians or the greatest chess players of all time or the greatest basketball players of all time, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson, or the greatest chess players of all time, Bobby Fischer, these sort of people, there's intangibles and other factors involved that just separate them and just make them so much greater than the rest. And it's not just raw talent, and it's not just having the best tutors. There's factors that are not necessarily intangible, but harder to quantify. For this female, in this instance, this 8-year-old, one thing may just be, her dichotomy in the fact that she has both of these talents may constrain her so that she can't devote all her time to one specific sphere and reach her full potential in one sphere. On the flip side, a lot of these females, I mean, if you just go on YouTube and search piano prodigy, as I've done in my past, you see countless videos of these 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old prodigies who are not only playing tremendous pieces at a young age that are of high levels of difficulty, but obviously not extreme levels of difficulty. I mean, the scale of difficulty for piano pieces, first off, it's not linear in the fact that that it is with something like a video game. Because it's music, it's once you get deeper and deeper, it's arguable which one's better or worse or harder or whatever. But long story short, they're playing very tough pieces, and not only that, but they're composing ridiculous pieces, and yet none of them will. I'm pretty sure that none of them will make it past that point of Mozart status. And the reasoning behind this, I think, goes back to the singing competition analogy. When I watch singing competitions like American Idol, The Voice, how many seasons have gone by where someone has won, and yet their true impact on the musical industry will never be that great. Like 1 out of the 10 seasons, there'll be like one winner. Like for instance, in American Idol, there's Kelly Clarkson who really revolutionized her industry in certain ways, but not even that much. Like, will she be remembered as someone like Michael Jackson or the Beatles, or someone who like Mozart or Bach, who all of them who have, in my opinion, composed their own music and contributed with their creative mind, not just their vocal talent. And I feel like that is one of the things one of the big factors that singing competitions and TV shows and news shows that sort of sensationalize these people fail to take into account. It's very hard to factor in that quality to a singing competition TV show. And what it is, and again, it's just one of the many factors out there, is composing music. Like there's plenty of singers, arguably, that have made decent success by having someone else write their songs and then just singing them. But I feel like the greatest people, they've contributed creatively by either composing their own songs or having some part in composing songs. Not always though, and if they don't have that, they have some other factor. Miley Cyrus is a great example. Although she does not write her own music, she contributes artistically in different ways, visually, stage presence, and her whole journey to success, if you research her, is not something where she just woke up and got lucky. Her pathway to get a job on Disney with the Hannah Montana show and auditioning to become, I think she started off auditioning to be the best friend of Hannah Montana, and she ended up becoming the star. And in fact, the show was not called Hannah Montana to begin with. But long story short, her drive and persistence to get onto the stage and onto that TV show, it's one of those factors that really separate those who make it from those who don't. And obviously, it's a smorgasbord of different factors for different people. And it's not necessarily like, okay, you need persistence 100% of the time. If, the Beatles or another group may not have had persistence, just to give you an example. They did, by the way, but they had other traits. And what I mean by this is, okay, they didn't have persistence in that sense, like Miley Cyrus did when she sent in audition tape and pleaded with Disney to give her a chance. But they had all other factors, many hundreds of factors that came together, that propelled them to create music that will be remembered for a long period of time as classic, revolutionizing music. And so, what I'm saying here, long story short, is that this girl is pretty awesome. My jaw dropped. For her to be able to do the stuff she did at such an early age, it's, first off, it's kind of like, wow, what have I done with my life? But at the same time, it's like, okay, I actually have done quite a lot with my life, and, at the same time, it's not necessarily what you were gifted with, but also what you do with what you are not gifted with. That really makes you remember. Just think of Stephen Hawking or Helen Keller, both two people who were removed of normal human capabilities, seeing, hearing, and they were still able to accomplish tremendous things because they, first off, there's a lot of reasons, but one, they were given a situation where they could, two, they believed in themselves. And so for this girl, and a lot of our prodigies, they run the risk, same thing with fame or being inherited wealth, they run the risk of the tortoise and the hare problem, where given their advantages, they start being lethargic. Whereas the people who end up becoming very successful oftentimes have a drive in and of itself. For this girl, though, I feel like she's just ridiculously out of the norm. She was given, and I think this is one of those things where it just gives you a glimpse of the potential of the human species. The human species has such potential with genetic variability to create tremendous prodigies in the world. And if we survive for the next 100,000 to a million years, I believe that there will be prodigies 100,000 or a million years out in our future that just blow your mind. And 1 million to 10 million or billion years in our future, things will be beyond our wildest imaginations in terms of technology, but also in terms of the genetic variation and evolution of our species, to a point where the smartest people in existence in our history and up until present are, in terms of IQ and intelligence, the norm for the species. Because as natural selection works, the smartest people survive, or maybe not necessarily intelligence, but other traits. And obviously this is very arguable and debatable because from my experiences and observations in life, not necessarily the smartest people in the world survive or reproduce or become the most successful in life in terms of attaining resources and creating the most offspring. That's not the case at all. But I find that a lot of very interesting factors allow people to thrive and do well in society. And it's not just good looks or intelligence. It's very peculiar things. Street smarts, persuasiveness, attentiveness, attention to detail and things other people don't notice, colloquialism, a sense of humor, a good sense of humor, networking skills, thousands of factors. all come together. So it's a very, very complicated part of life, when you really think about it. So this girl, she's obviously going to do well. Um, as for what she's going to accomplish in life, I feel like it really comes down to, obviously she has, just from that little video, I know she has mentors and teachers who will give her the resources to do what she wants. But as far as making a huge impact like Mozart or something of that caliber, um, there's much more to it than that. Mozart was ahead of his time in his day and age. So for her to make a similar impact, although she's ahead of the crowd musically in terms of chess, to really revolutionize the game, she has to just blow apart everything that's already established in a certain way, in shape and form, not just be ahead of the game as of now. And so I think it's very interesting. I do think that a lot of these prodigies, they may just be prodigies musically, but once they get to adulthood, they may just be forgotten, or fade into the crowd with all the other musicians. And for something like music and art, there's probably many reasons. One, the fact that there's so many, it's such a subjective thing, and another is that it's very competitive, and to just rise above the crowd and just boom, create something so revolutionary. First off, it's very hard. Second off, oftentimes it's not something that's really recognized or acknowledged until hundreds of years after your death. On top of that, it's such a subjective thing. It's not as black and white or quantitative as other things are. And on top of that, it's like, okay, well, you've created this artwork or this musical composition, but that's a genre of the past. And I think we've come to an interesting point in our time where it's like, okay, this person has written, I don't know, this classical musical piece. But we're in a day and age where pop and rock and mainstream music and dubstep is the norm. So even if you create something revolutionary, will it really make such an impact as it did in the past when classical music was the norm? So again, all these things come together. We don't know what's going to happen, and I feel like it did a little bit of a disservice, probably somewhat intentionally, the video I'm talking about, because it's sort of like, she referenced that she was in the United States Emirates, but she was writing a book on it, so it almost implied that she knew about, she was potentially writing a book about the politics or economy there, and that will just drop my jaw further, because in order to do that, to have those three spheres of knowledge, which I don't think is actually what's going on, she would have to devote a large amount of time and have a large interest in politics, economics, and so forth. But we don't know, and it cut off before she mentioned it. Perhaps it's just about her journey or her time there, and she had a great amount of time there. But again, because the Ellen DeGeneres show is a sort of commercial show, they probably did that to sensationalize things and make it seem like, oh my goodness, this girl's so multi-talented, multifaceted, and amazing in so much areas. I doubt it's true, but still, for her to have such skill at piano, and believe me, I've seen varying levels of genius in different skill sets, mathematics, and music as well. she really is on the far end, but at the same time, it's like it's kind of sad too, because I mean, you will run into those cases where there are people who are they're many steps ahead of the crowd. Let's say the average person in the 10th grade, they do 10th grade math. You run into people who are geniuses, and they're like 4 or 5 years ahead of the crowd. They're in 10th grade, but they're doing math 5 years ahead. They're considered a genius. But when you look at something on a nationwide or worldwide basis, they're not so much a genius anymore, because there are fifth graders doing the same math and excelling at it. And there may be a first grader in South Africa who has they're not only doing the same math, but because they didn't have textbooks and and that sort of stuff, they taught themselves the mathematics and the whole concept. So because of that, I feel like it's somewhat sad when you're given that, but at the same time, it's still an advantage. And if you use it right, you can create greater potential and greater impact than if you didn't. So I'm excited to see where this 8-year-old goes. And it is very interesting how this world works. And when you really think about it, it's like, wow, what's going to happen to her? Will she really make as big an impact as Mozart or even Taylor Swift? A lot of people don't think so, but I feel like Taylor Swift, her music will be, her current pop music, her latest year's music, I don't know about, but some of her songs are very creative, like some of her multi-platinum songs, they were created when she was very, very young, in high school and so forth, for the talent show. So it's like although when you meet and talk to someone like Taylor Swift or the Beatles, Paul McCartney, he's still alive. When you talk to them and you interact with them and you see them throughout their life, they were never remarked at or looked at as a genius or a prodigy, and yet they made such a huge impact in a revolutionary way. So I don't think it's as simple as, oh my goodness, this person at a young age, boom, doing stuff that adults can't do, genius, destined for great things. No, it's more complicated than that. And at the same time, you will get people like Mozart who were similar to her, prodigies at a young age. But at the same time, I feel like if you study Mozart and his history, this girl, her level of musical talent at her age at 8, if you compared her to Mozart, Mozart may in fact come out ahead. He was just as talented, if not more talented, than this girl. So it's more so than just talent. For Mozart, I feel like it was, and I'm not a great historian who's really researched this. If you are, please detail it in the comments so we can all learn. But I feel like for someone like Mozart, he was someone who not only had this tremendous talent, but he was born into an environment where all the resources he wanted and everything he wanted, or not necessarily wanted, but would have needed to reach his full potential, were almost given to him, because his father was in the musical industry himself and sort of just let him, gave him whatever he needed in terms of instruction and everything. So this girl is still ridiculous. I encourage you to watch the video if you haven't already. And one last thing I want to remark on is the fact that she's the way she talks. I can tell she has a ridiculous IQ, because the way she performed, the way she interacted afterward, she was so happy. It was so effortless. It was so amazing how effortless and happy she was. How colloquially she talked about everything. And on top of that, it's just like, oh my goodness. And then you have Ellen there, another great example. She doesn't have any, very obvious innate talent, and yet in terms of financial success and impact she's had on the television industry and impacting other people's lives, amazing, and yet she's just this ordinary woman. So I feel like, if you're one of those people like, oh my goodness, I'm not a genius or a talent like this girl is, don't despair. And if you know someone who's despairing about that, share them this video. It might lift their spirits up. I mean, just look at Ellen DeGeneres. She has a great sense of humor, but one can argue she doesn't have any real talent in anything that's very quantitatively black and white defined. But if you look deeper into it, she's like, she's very nice to everyone. She has a great vision. She has great energy, and she used what she had as a personality and as a kind person to reach the masses, and it's just amazing. And she's achieved great financial success and success in impacting other people's lives. And so for this girl, finally, I think it's just so amazing when she talks to Ellen and she just remarks on the chess players. It just implies just so much intelligence, just genetic luck, in a sense, in the fact that she has this. But at the same time, it's just ridiculously amazing, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. At the same time, even if her spheres of interest, if it's just music and chess, that's amazing in itself. Because if you get into chess, you'll have to be thinking 7, 8 to 10 moves ahead of your opponent to really